Greetings. Hope this finds you well. Today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the military-industrial complex. That was a term, I believe it was coined by President Eisenhower during his farewell address. I think it was 1971, something like that. And that's basically where, during the speech, he was kind of warning us as a society, as a culture, of this road that we were going down to giving so much power and resources to the military, to the defense industry, along with all the corporations that are kind of intertwined in that process, and just how when that happens, that means it's taken away from other stuff, because when we spend money on the military, that's less money that can go towards, let's say, education, healthcare, clean environment, those type of things. So he was warning us about that since 1971, and I believe his warnings were very succinct, and they seem to come true, because the military-industrial complex is super powerful, have really powerful lobbyists in Congress that make sure the defense budget stays so bloated and there's so much waste, because it benefits those, the Lockheed Martins, the Boeings, the General Dynamics of the world. This is just so crazy to me. The U.S. spends more on its military budget than the next 7 countries combined. I'm going to say that once more. The U.S. military spends more on its defense budget than the next 7 countries combined. That's insane. And for, I think, 2018, the budget was over $600 billion for the U.S. military, and that's over half the federal government's discretionary spending is going towards death and destruction. Yay for us. And then, so that was from one source. Another source, I'll put these in the link below, is cheatsheet.com. It's talking about how the base budget for the U.S. military was $597 billion for 2018. Then they also had a budget for kind of overseas operations. They mentioned like ISIS, and that was around $88.9 billion. And then you also have to take into account these other defense agencies, FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, etc. That make up the rest of the defense budget. And so this site had a higher number when you take all of those facets into account. The military budget for 2018 was $886 billion, according to this website. That's almost $1 trillion. That's just insane. That's crazy. And then, it was also mentioned a report in 2015 from the Washington Post that showed the Department of Defense was wasting $125 billion a year due to bureaucratic waste. And of course, that report was buried because the military-industrial complex didn't want to hear that, because potentially then maybe that budget would shrink, and that would, affect all that stuff. So of course, that didn't really see the light of day. And then in 2016, this just shows how kind of concentrated the power is within the system. So in 2016, the DoD, Department of Defense, awarded $300 billion in defense contracts. $100 billion of that went to just 5 companies: Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics. And it was also, there was a University of Massachusetts study that looked at the role of how military spending does or doesn't create jobs, and they came to the conclusion that pretty much any other area that the government, say, invests in, whether it's like healthcare or maybe environment or green new jobs, that type of thing, are more often than not going to be better at creating jobs than dumping that money into the military's coffers. And then also, yeah, they're just with the military and how much money is going into it and coming through it. There's not really any type of reasonable kind of accounting practices to make sure what's happening to these just massive amounts of money. So, for example, during the Iraq War, there was $12 billion that were sent over there to kind of help with the transition, kind of get all that stuff rolling. Nobody knows what happened to it. That's $12 billion. Nobody knows what happened to it. And obviously that's not going to be the first or the last time something that happened with that, and it could even, not a real possibility that even, bigger chunks of money have been lost by them as well. Let's see. And then, so one of the solutions that they mentioned in this article was allowing the Department of Defense to close bases that are redundant or obsolete. They mentioned Guantanamo Bay. Forbes was saying it. Guantanamo Bay takes about $454 million each year to run, and that equates to about $2.7 million a year per prisoner that is there. That's our tax dollars. Just $2.7 million a year to lock somebody up in a cage and, torture and waterboard. Which wouldn't put it past them that they're still doing that stuff. So this just how much money and influence the military-industrial complex has over our society and culture. It's not good. There's nothing good that comes from it that I can see. Our infrastructure's crumbling. We need a Green New Deal. We need quality education for everybody, no matter the income, K through 12 and post-secondary if interested. Let's see, universal health care. All kinds of different stuff that would be much better uses for this money than to, making sure the CEOs of these defense companies, have millions of dollars in their bank account. That's basically all we're getting from it, and just making people who live in other areas of the world really upset and angry at us, because the United States is, especially at least the military, is seen as one of the most seen as kind of the biggest terrorist organization in the world, and for good reason, I think, because we're not out there intervening with some type of moral or real ethics in mind. We're just doing it when it suits the neoliberal corporate military industrial complex interest. So like I said, closing down those obsolete old bases, that's one way. Just reducing the budget. Like I said in the beginning, our budget, U.S. military's budget is 7 times bigger than the next 7 countries combined, and I don't feel like that's making us any safer. It's probably making us less safe, to be honest. So downsizing the budget, cutting it drastically, ending Citizens United, so these defense companies aren't just able to create super PACs and lobby these politicians, and just donating obscene amounts of money to their campaign or re-election campaign, whatever it may be. Getting money out of politics, that would help, as well as, I'm trying to think what else were those kind of the biggest. Those are kind of the biggest ones that I have at this point, and also just staying knowledgeable about the subject, talking to other people, creating videos like I am here, sharing them with people, not trying to vote for, or trying to advocate to our politicians that we want this budget to be decreased because we have all these other needs that are much more pressing, and we can drastically cut our military spending and still be very safe and protected populace, in my humble opinion. So these are some of my thoughts on the military industrial complex. I think we need to radically change how our tax dollars are spent in this country, because most of us are getting left behind in more than one way, while those at the very top keep seeing the benefits, and this is just another kind of outlet for it to view that through that type of lens. So I could keep going on and on about this, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you have any concerns about how much money we are spending on our military? If so, why? If not, why not? And and if you think it's too much, what are some ways that we can actively work towards decreasing that budget and making our society more equitable, more healthy, more transparent, more connected, and more prosperous? Anyways, let's remember to be kind to the animals, be kind to the planet, be kind to each other, and most important of all, be kind to ourselves. Much love. Peace!